My dad was in the Army in World War II. My uncles were all in the Army or Navy in World War II. So the whole family, that generation, if you were a young, able-bodied person, you went to war. Only my Uncle Carl stayed in after World War II. He was the Army Air Force. He flew bombers. So I really did not have a strong military background other than World War II war stories growing up. My brother, who's 3 years older, was going to Boston University, which is very expensive and was putting a stress on the family. And so West Point seemed like a good alternative. I had been accepted, in fact, at Notre Dame, and we were waiting to hear about a scholarship. But when I went into my local senator's office to ask about West Point, they said, we don't have any appointments to West Point this year, but we do have one to the Air Force Academy. That's the first time I heard about the Air Force Academy. And so I applied, got the nomination from my senator, and appointment. It was not any stars in my eyes or thinking about flying until I got to the academy and fell in love with flying. And by the end, I would say, of Dooley Summer, I pretty much understood more of what I was getting myself into and what life was going to be like. And then over the 4 years, between Operation Third Lieutenant, something called a ZI field trip around the different bases, you learn more and more about the Air Force. And I found it very motivational. I can remember one morning on a run early. And in those days, the Class 65 was tough on us. And I didn't feel well. And I ended up having a dry heave on the side of the road and fell out of formation. And I had a firstie come over and said, you're giving it everything you got. Let's go ahead and get back into formation. And I finished dry heaving and got back in. But he wasn't yelling at me, he was motivating me. And he was actually complimenting me, even though I was failing that morning. And most of the Class 65 were very busy chewing me out in one way or another and motivating me in a negative way, but still motivating me. But this was a very positive thing that I took away from that. And for me, it was okay, I learned from that. But I knew right from the get-go that I was never going to be like that. That was not going to be me. I was never a yeller or a screamer. I tried to motivate people in a positive way if I possibly could. Now, you hold people accountable. You have to. In fact, there's a few cadets I had to kick out when I was in AOC because they were not going to be successful in the Air Force. And so you can still make tough decisions, but those are gut-wrenching, hard decisions to make, but you have to make them because the mission comes first. One of the best jobs I had at the Academy was as a senior. I was an element leader during freshman summer. And that was the first time where I had a group of cadets, freshmen, that were mine. And I was responsible for their success and failure to give them every opportunity to succeed. And they were a terrific bunch. It's sort of like in the Air Force when you have a big organization. You like the challenge and there's lots of things going on. But if you're a squadron commander, you know everybody in the squadron, you know their families, you know what's going on in their lives. And to me, being a squadron commander in the Air Force is one of the best jobs you can possibly have. The Air Force taught me selfless service, to not be selfish, that you don't really get ahead by walking over people. You will not be successful if you do that. That was incorporated in me at the Academy almost unconsciously, but it became part of the culture in the Air Force. And then later on, we, the Air Force, came up with the core values. And people that I knew and for myself, we kind of said, yeah, that's us. That's how we should live our life. And I learned that at the Academy. Watching the cadets nowadays, and you see how motivated they are, how smart they are, how incredibly skilled they are, it's a little awesome. I'm glad I don't have to compete with them because they're that good. And that's why I've stayed connected to the Academy. It's why my modest giving is important to me to give back and to do it through the Falcon Foundation, through my class, because it's all about those young people. The Air Force mission is important. It is enduring. It means life or death to our country. And the Air Force Academy produces young men and women who support that in a selfless way and are willing to give their all in order to make sure that happens. So for me, continuing to be part of that is a very important part of my adult life, and something that I know that I'm one of many that feel that way.